Hello guys, I finally had the time to properly analyze the teaser, and let me tell you, I found some hidden details that I haven't seen anyone talk about. So make sure to stay until the end to fully understand the video. Also, please skip this video if you don't want spoilers, because trust me, I'm going to reveal a lot. I think the best way to analyze this teaser is to go frame by frame, grouping scenes based on their locations. First, I'll talk about what we saw happening in the player's dorm. After that, I'll cover the game itself. And finally, we'll wrap up with the frontman and the VIPs. Right from the beginning, Squid Game grabs our attention with the guards walking alongside a coffin. But what's interesting is that in the very next frame, we see a close-up of Myungi. Netflix is telling us right from the start that this character will play one of the biggest roles in Season 3. Why else would player 333 be the first to appear in the teaser? He didn't participate in the rebellion, and he wasn't part of Gi-hun's close group. It would have made more sense for the first close-up to be of a player directly involved in the rebellion, like Dae-ho or Hyunjun. But nope, it's Myungi. This makes me think he'll have a very important role in the series. If you're not already familiar with the triangle theory based on the TV series poster, I definitely recommend looking it up. It might actually be true. I don't think I need to explain why this sequence clearly happens right after the rebellion. Now, moving on to the next frame, we see the players approaching the coffin. And there's a nice little visual here showing how the players are divided into two teams based on their votes, yet both sides are curious about who's inside the coffin. While it might not seem that relevant, from a psychological point of view, it's actually a pretty interesting reflection of human nature. Just a few hours earlier, these players were ready to kill innocent people just to keep the game going, but now they're crowding around to see who died. I mean, it should be irrelevant to them, since all the players were former ex-players. From their perspective, they only have something to gain. One ex-player is dead, and another 100 million won gets added to the prize pool. Another interesting frame in this sequence shows Dae-ho from a distance. Look at his face. It reflects guilt, fear, and shame. We're then shown that the person inside the coffin is Gi-hun. This answers one of the biggest questions we had about Season 3. After Netflix revealed it, the answer actually made a lot of sense. He was the only rebel player shown getting knocked out. Everyone else was shot. So it should have been obvious that Gi-hun was in the coffin, yet many people didn't expect this twist. The next scene in the dorm is the voting moment, but I discovered something massive here that I initially overlooked when I first saw the teaser. I assumed the sequence happened in chronological order. The guards enter to announce the vote, and then the voting takes place. But that first part, where the guards are entering the door, isn't actually about the vote. If we pause the video and go frame by frame, we can catch a glimpse of two guards holding a box. If we zoom in and analyze the image closely, we'll notice that the box looks very similar to the ones Gi-hun, Song-woo, and Sae-byuk received as a reward for reaching the final game. This 1 second sequence is actually from the night before the final game, the moment when the finalists received their suits and a fancy dinner. So this could possibly mean that we'll get to see all 6 games and a Squid Game winner by the end of the season. Another important detail supporting this theory is the lighting. We know how much Squid Game values symbolic lighting, with specific tones representing different events. In Season 1, when the piggy bank was revealed, the lighting shifted to a yellow tone. That same yellow lighting can be seen behind the guard here, which strongly suggests this scene takes place right before the final game. We also get a visual confirmation with the piggy bank itself, and judging by how full it is, it looks like no more than 4 players have made it to this stage. Now back to the voting scene. Based on the number of players shown, I'm certain this vote is taking place after the rebellion. After the bathroom fight, there were 95 players left, 48 X's and 47 O's. Many of the X's died in the special game and the revolt. While we didn't get an official count, we can estimate there are about 50 players remaining by the end of Season 2. In the same frame, we can spot Gi-hun tied to the bed. It's genuinely upsetting to see him like that. I think it's pretty clear how this voting session will play out. Later, we get a close-up of Gi-hun still tied to the bed. This raises a major question. Is this scene part of the same voting session, or is it from a different vote after a new game? It would be very interesting if Gi-hun were forbidden to vote as punishment for revolting. But even so, I doubt they'd keep him handcuffed the entire time he's in the dorm. Now let's move on to the game itself. We're introduced to a gumball machine that randomly places players into two teams based on the color of the ball. I don't think you realize how huge this is, guys. It's the first time in Squid Game history that teams are randomly assigned. Until now, players always had the power to choose their own teams, their own fate. But now, that choice is gone. Honestly, from a psychological perspective, it would have been more impactful if the players chose their own teams then learned they'd be competing against each other. But since the teams are assigned randomly, the emotional blow is softened. We saw, for example, that the mother and son end up on opposing teams. And while it's heartbreaking, it's a little easier to accept because they had no say in the matter. Take the marble game, for example. We saw the immense psychological toll it took on the players once they realized they had to compete against their partners. Now imagine this alternate scenario. The organizers ask everyone to pick a team, and Gi-hun shares his own traumatic marble game experience. Based on that, the mother and son decide to split up, thinking it will protect them. But then, they find out that what Gi-hun said wasn't true. They actually have to compete against each other. Between those two scenarios, which one do you think would mess them up more? Exactly. The emotional manipulation would be far more intense. What's really interesting is that Netflix chose to show us this particular game using a sequence that appears to be the penultimate part of the game setup. I'll come back to this shortly. Judging by the number of players, this seems to be the fourth game. That would place the Two Dolls game as the fifth one, because I doubt Netflix would spoil the final game, and I really don't see player 100 making it that far. He'll most likely die during the Two Dolls game. Next, we're shown the team selection process. Players lining up, spinning the wheel, and being assigned a team based on the color of the ball. Again, we get a close-up of Myungi, another strong hint that he has a major role to play in the season finale. But the moment I want to focus on is this particular scene where Young-sik is assigned to the blue team and slowly looks up at his mother, who's holding a red ball. From this, we can assume that players are lining up in descending order. However, this theory runs into a problem when we revisit the first team selection scene Netflix showed us. In that one, Gi-hun is the last player to pick, and the only remaining ball is red. There are two key observations about this frame. First, we can clearly see which players belong to which team. Blue team on the left, red team on the right. Pretty straightforward, right? So why mention it? Because Myungi is shown on the blue team in that moment, but later in the teaser and in various promo images, he's wearing a red vest. That's a major inconsistency, and I believe it's a deliberate clue about the game mechanics. We also see Dae-ho positioned at the back of the blue team. Another important detail is the positioning of the players. I don't know if I'm overanalyzing, but there's definitely something odd here. Look at how all the players are facing the guards, only turning their torsos slightly toward the gumball machine. I believe the guards deliberately made them stand like this to increase mental stress, not knowing right away whether your friends will end up on your team or the opposing one. We also get a close-up of Dae-ho, but can we actually say for sure that this is the tag game? Because earlier, we saw him at the back of the blue team, and based on this frame, it looks like he's surrounded by people, not isolated. That might be a subtle clue that Dae-ho survives the fourth game. As for why he's looking that way, if this is indeed the fourth game, he's most likely looking at Hyunju, who is on the same team as him. He probably has mixed feelings. On one hand, he's relieved to be on the same team with someone he knows and trusts, someone highly capable. But on the other hand, he's still dealing with the guilt of being a coward and fleeing the battle, which forced Hyunju to return to the dorm for ammo. Now here's something wild that no one seems to have noticed. Look closely at this image. Netflix clearly wanted us to focus on the shaman lady and her group, but they were hoping we'd overlook what's happening in the background. If we zoom in and increase the brightness just a bit, we can see a guard threatening a blue player while a red player is sitting alone on the floor. What's actually going on here? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. My guess, Gi-hun did something to switch teams in order to protect Junhee. Originally, he was on the blue team, but in the next sequence, we see him wearing red. That can't be a coincidence. But again, that's just speculation. There are still way too many unanswered questions about how this game works. For example, what's inside the boxes that players receive before the game? Based on another photo posted on the official Squid Game Instagram, we can assume the blue box contains a key. The most popular theory about this game goes like this. It's a tag-style challenge where the blue team receives a key and the red team receives a knife. Both teams enter a maze. The blue team must find a door that can be unlocked with their key, while the red team hunts them down. The game is supposed to last 10 minutes. But here's the problem. In my opinion, if this theory is true, then the blue team is at a massive disadvantage, unless they're given a head start inside the maze. And let's be real, we don't even know for sure that the red team is getting a knife. That part of the theory comes from leaked footage and the amount of blood seen during the game. Until we see otherwise, I don't believe the guards would just hand weapons to only one group of players and tell them to go hunt the others. That sounds too chaotic, even by Squid Game standards. I plan to make a separate video diving deeper into what games we might see in Season 3, so let me know in the comments if that's something you'd like to see. For now, we'll just briefly cover what the teaser actually shows. The first scene in the teaser related to this game shows Hyunju preparing to fight a red team player. If you look closely, you can clearly see the red color on the vest. So yeah, this game is definitely going to be brutal. We also see a player bleeding heavily, and in the next frame, Gi-hun walks past the body of a dead blue team member. This led a lot of people to speculate that Gi-hun killed that player. But I'm here to say, that's not true. The player was already dead. Gi-hun is walking by too casually for it to be someone he just killed. In fact, judging by his expression, it doesn't even look like it's someone important to him. As for the blood stain on his shoulder, he already had that during the rebellion sequence. It's not from this game. Now, two of the most important frames from this game involve player 333 and what appears to be the shaman lady's hand, drawing an arrow pointing in a specific direction. These two sequences are actually key pillars of the prey and predator theory I mentioned earlier. First, we have Myungi, a red team player, wearing a necklace that resembles the one associated with the shaman's key. His face is covered in blood, strongly suggesting that he fought and killed a blue player to obtain a key. At first, I speculated that the look of disappointment on his face was because something happened to Junhee, or maybe because he realized he was about to die. But after looking deeper into it, I came across another theory, that his expression is one of guilt. Guilt from killing someone in order to get their key. Gi-hun isn't a bad or aggressive person. We've seen his character several times during his clashes with Thanos. He took all that aggression not out of fear, but because deep down, he knew it was true. He was responsible for causing others pain, and he accepted that was his cross to bear. When Minsu got cornered by Thanos, Gi-hun immediately stepped in to defend him and started a fight. So it's not that he was afraid, he just believed he deserved the blame. So it wouldn't be surprising for him to react the way he does if this is the first time he's actually killed someone. His expression is reminiscent of how Gi-hun looked after surviving the marble game by tricking the old man. It's the same mixture of guilt, shock, and self-loathing. The last two parts I want to discuss about the tag game involve two specific shots. One of a player looking through a keyhole, who, based on facial structure, we can confidently say is the shaman lady, and another of Minsu. I'm convinced Minsu will play a much bigger role in the final season. But unlike what many people think, I don't believe he's headed for a redemption arc. Instead, I think he's more likely to spiral and become a villain. If the creators wanted to frame Minsu as a hero, they would have had him save Semi, but he didn't. His cowardice stopped him from helping her. In this game, though, he's going to be forced to make a choice. Kill or be killed. There's no more running or hiding. A lot of people are speculating that Min-soo is angry at Nam-gyu in that particular scene and is preparing to attack him. And yes, that could be true. I can definitely see that happening. However, I'm more inclined to believe that he ends up attacking a random player, eventually killing them. This act would give him an incredible boost in confidence, making him feel invincible, like he's capable of anything. We know from official Netflix photos that Min-soo changes his vote from an X to an O. While some people think this might be out of fear of Nam-gyu, there's also a possibility that his vote to continue the games stems from this newfound sense of power and dominance. If we zoom into the photo, we can spot a bloodstain on his jacket, which strongly supports the theory that he has already killed someone. But this photo holds another important secret. It confirms that the 5th game is the Two Dolls game. If you look closely at the background behind Min-soo, it looks almost identical to the setting shown in the teaser we got at the end of Season 2. But how can I be so sure, just based on that? Well, we have another major clue, and that's the blue badge Min-soo is wearing. We've already determined that the tag game is the 4th game, and if we zoom in on the photo taken before that game, we can spot Min-soo with a red badge on his chest. That red badge indicated he didn't change his vote the morning after the rebellion, but in this newer image, he's shown wearing a blue badge, which means he voted to continue the game, most likely in a second voting session held after the 4th game. So not only did he survive the tag game, but something must have shifted for him mentally or emotionally, pushing him to keep going. Maybe it's that newfound strength I mentioned earlier. I almost forgot to talk about the dorm scene where we see Geum-ja completely breaking down in tears. There are 2 major points to consider here. First, based on her reaction, I'm 90% certain that Young-sik is dead. No other player's death would devastate her like this. When Young-mai died, she was emotional, but not to this level. This kind of breakdown only makes sense if she lost her son. Second, notice that her hair is untied. We already know from Season 2 that she hides a secret knife in her hairpin. The fact that her hair is now down strongly suggests that she used the knife. So here's the best guess right now. The red team was tasked with hunting the blue team, and Geum-ja gave her knife to Young-sik so he could protect himself in the maze. That feels like the most logical explanation. But this theory has one big flaw. If she gave him the knife to survive, then why is he dead? The hidden knife was a major element in Season 2, so it's hard to believe it would be wasted on something insignificant. If Young-sik used the knife and still ended up dying, then the knife wouldn't have served any meaningful purpose, and it wouldn't have been worth teasing back in Season 2. If that were the case, the knife would have been introduced much later, perhaps right before the game started. But that's not how it happened. Young-sik's death was actually foreshadowed multiple times in Season 2. Player 007's entire character arc revolves around his relationship with his mother. She, on the other hand, has connections with other players, like 222 and 120, meaning she'll likely stick around longer, while he becomes one of the earlier casualties. She even told her son, "If you die, I have nothing left to live for." That line alone strongly hints that he will die, most likely in Game 4. Some fans believe Geum-ja will follow the same fate as player 69 from Season 1 and end up taking her own life. But I don't think that's the case. For one, it would be repetitive and predictable, a recycled motif from Season 1. Honestly, it would be kind of boring to go that route again. This is also why I don't believe Season 3 will end with just one winner. A more compelling end for Geum-ja would be a self-sacrifice, one that saves Junhee or Hyunju. That would not only elevate her arc, but also give her death real weight and emotional payoff. Now, in my previous video, I completely forgot to mention No-ul, the blackguard, and player 246. I had all my notes ready, but I was so tired I left them out of the script. So here's what I wanted to say. As many of you have guessed, the player being scanned is player 246. This scene takes place right after the rebellion. You can tell by the color of the wall. It's identical to the one where Gyeong-seok supposedly died. I believe this confirms that the triangle guard who shot him was actually No Yul. She scanned him to declare him dead and prep him for organ harvesting, but something went wrong. She got caught by the black square. I think he starts to grow suspicious, wondering why No Errol suddenly switched sides and started helping the organ traffickers. He goes to verify player 246's body and realizes something shocking: he's still alive. Later in the episode, the black square finishes him off and handcuffs No Yul, but she manages to escape through the ventilation system. We later see her successfully sneaking out of the facility and eventually linking up with the detective. Speaking of which, yes, we also get confirmation that Junho has found the island, and what's interesting is that he appears to have arrived in the same way he did back in Season 1. This tells us something huge. The booby-trapped island we saw earlier was a decoy. It wasn't the real one. That raises two important questions. How did Junho finally find the correct island? And why is he alone in every teaser sequence we've seen so far? Regarding how he found the island, I have two theories. The first one is that he found out about the captain and tortured him until he got the right information. The second one is that he saw the VIP helicopter and decided to follow it. Now, regarding why he is alone, either the team has split up to cover more ground, or they are all dead, and Junho is the sole survivor of an attack. Either way, he found the island and is ready to go full Rambo. Another interesting shot is this one, showing the back of a guard outside the base. Most of you assumed that this is No Yul, but I'm here to tell you that it's not. If it were No Yul, why would they only show her back without her face? And why would they show us another sequence with her outside the ventilation system? I think that's Junho. He managed to kill a guard and is using the uniform to infiltrate the game. Also, the weapon he's holding while storming this luxurious place is very similar to the weapons the Squid Game guards use. If we look at the pattern on the wall, it seems to resemble the pattern at the entrance to the VIP room, and I believe that's where Junho storms the place. However, I don't think the VIPs are there. Based on their experience from the first season, they would surely have guards outside the doors. They would have heard any gunshot and would run for their lives. So I'm thinking that Junho would only find an empty room where he can gather some information about the games. I believe this is what is triggering the black square mask here. We can see on the screen that the players are either going to a game or coming from a game, so it's most likely that Junho arrived either 1 second too late or too early, and the black square mask is ordering the guards to go to the VIP room and catch the intruder. Regarding the front man crying, this could honestly go in multiple directions, but from all the possibilities, I've only found two that could possibly happen. Based on the background, we can assume that he's in his chamber, having a deep reflection on what he's done with his life. Maybe the trigger for this is seeing his brother, or even worse, seeing his brother die. We saw the same facial expression when In-ho told his story to Gi-hun. Maybe now that he realizes he has nothing left in this world, he could have a change of heart. As for the scene where we get a glimpse of the front man, this scene wasn't randomly added, and it reveals a lot of clues about the game's status. This was already discussed in the Squid Game subreddit, and I want to give a shout out to Alternative Fix and Alyssa A, because they posted some very good, detailed photos about this. After closely examining the screenshot and cross-referencing the player floor from Season 2, we can deduce that players 333, 334, 359, 260, and 120 are alive for the 5th game. I'll put the link in the description because they offer more information and I don't want to take credit for their work. Next, what did you first think when you saw No Earl in the archives room? My initial thought was that she would burn everything down. But here's the thing, that's not the archive where Junho entered, the one that holds information about the games. I think this archive is for the employees, and Noelle knows that if the police were to storm the place and find those files, a lot of people, herself included, would get into serious trouble. I don't think she's morally good, because she kept working there for 7 years. I only believe she rebelled because of the death of player 246. That's why she wants to keep the other guards safe and only make the higher-ups pay. Finally, we have the VIPs. I knew they were coming, but I didn't expect them to be completely different people. Maybe Netflix had trouble hiring the same actors, or maybe they're scarred by what happened in the first season and didn't want to risk it anymore. What we can say for sure is that this time we have 2 fewer VIPs, and now there's a woman among them. At first, I thought there were 2 women, but if we slow down the video at the 52-second mark, we can see that the VIP with long hair is actually a man, based on his beard. We know from Season 1 that the VIPs usually arrive for the 5th game, and watch the game from a jungle-themed room. We can see the same room here, where we get a close-up of one of the VIPs. I believe this is the famous American actor Hwang Dong-hyuk, mentioned would make a cameo. I also believe his identity will be exposed to the whole world, like a sort of Epstein parallel. Another big question raised in the comments is whether the blurred part of the photo represents the model for the 2-doll game. We know that for the Glass Bridge game, the VIPs are shown a mock-up of how the game will unfold, so maybe this is true for this season. As well, as for this screenshot where all the VIPs are standing, I can definitely say they are watching the final game, because the room is very similar to the one from Season 1. And just like in the first season, they are all standing to get a better view of the game. We can also see that 2 players are using binoculars, which didn't happen in the first season. This could suggest that the final game might not actually be Squid Game. I also believe this confirms that when Gi-hun entered the VIP room, there was no one there. The VIPs are safe and enjoying the final game from a distance. But the part I love the most about the VIPs is this scene where they're sitting at the table. What I find most intriguing is the table's shape, a hexagon. Why is this significant? Because it reveals what type of people the VIPs are. The hexagon symbolizes how each VIP has their own part and individuality. If the table had been round, for example, it would have signified that they are all equal and on the same team. But with the hexagonal table, the director is specifically hinting that the VIPs are every man for himself. They don't care about the person next to them, even if they share the same status. They are not on the same team. I also like how the table resembles a poker table, and I'm sure that the most talked about subject at this table is which player will win this round of Squid Game, and a new series of bets would be placed over the people's life. Now, the part you've all been waiting for, Gi-hun and her baby. If you've been part of this community for a while, you already know my thoughts about the theory that Gi-hun will give birth in Season 3. I've called that theory ridiculous before, and I still stand by that opinion, unless we get solid proof to the contrary. In my view, the only way she would give birth in the final season is in an epilogue, not during the games themselves. She mentioned that she hasn't heard from Myungi in at least 6 months, and we know the events of Squid Game unfold over just 1 week. That means if she were to give birth, it would be premature. The only thing that could trigger early labor would be the immense stress she's under during the games, but in that scenario, the baby would be born far too early and likely wouldn't survive. As I've said before, her pregnancy is barely visible, even though she tries to cover it with her jacket. Plus, she doesn't move like someone who's close to giving birth. She's participated in 2 very physical games, Red Light and Mingle, and at no point did she seem physically limited or in pain. That's why I've said there's just no way she gives birth in Season 3. So what's going on in this last scene where we see Gi-hun crying? She's still wearing her player shirt, and that tells us something. First off, I don't think this scene is from the tag game, because in that game, we clearly saw her wearing her jacket. So do we have any other photos of her without the jacket? Well, yes, kind of. If we go back to the voting scene shown earlier in the teaser, the one where Gi-hun is cuffed to the bed, we can spot something interesting. If we pause the video and zoom in on the blurred player behind Gi-hun, that person appears to have long hair with yellow tips, exactly like Gi-hun's hairstyle. We can also see that she has her player jacket tied in the middle, possibly to hide or protect her belly. So could this blurred player actually be Gi-hun? And if it is player 222, that raises another question. Does this mean Gi-hun is cuffed for the entire voting sequence? Because we've already established that this voting scene happens after the rebellion, and we also know that the tag game is the fourth game, where Gi-hun is clearly wearing her full jacket. But if this blurred player really is Gi-hun, and she has her jacket tied around her waist instead of wearing it, then this suggests the voting scene takes place after the fourth game. That would mean something significant must have happened during the tag game that caused her to stop wearing the jacket normally. And if that's the case, then the scene of her crying likely happens after the fourth game as well, possibly during the fifth. Looking closely at Gi-hun's facial expression, those are not tears of joy. They're tears of heartbreak. It's the look of someone who has realized that it's all over. If I had to compare it to another character's expression, I'd say it most resembles Young Mi's right before she was killed during the Mingle game, completely numb and lifeless. Could this really happen? I don't know. This is all speculation. But I don't think Hwang Dong-hyuk would shy away from killing a pregnant woman, despite the common belief that such a thing is taboo in Korean dramas. I think he would actually lean into it, using her story as a powerful symbol. He cares deeply about social commentary, and often uses Squid Game as a platform to highlight real-world issues. In my opinion, Gi-hun's death could be used to spark discussion around topics like abortion, maternal health, and how society treats pregnant women, especially in systems that are cold, rigid, and violent. Dong-hyuk has already used characters like Hyunju to raise awareness about transgender struggles, or Ali to bring attention to the plight of migrant workers. I believe Gi-hun will serve a similar purpose. Now, there's another theory going around that in this emotional scene, Gi-hun's water breaks. That facial expression, they say, is her realizing she's about to bring a baby into this horrific environment. Or worse, that she already gave birth and the front man has taken her baby, and she knows she'll never see him again. This theory ties into the idea that Geumja's hairpin was used to help Gi-hun deliver the baby. 149 supposedly cuts the umbilical cord. Now personally, I don't really buy into this theory, but I wanted to share it anyway, because honestly, with Squid Game, anything is possible. Finally, if we assume this scene of Gi-hun crying isn't from the tag game, then we can safely say that Myungi's reaction in those two leaked images has nothing to do with her. Hwang Dong-hyuk has said this will be the darkest season yet, so what could be darker than the death of a pregnant woman? Wow, that was a long video. I hope I didn't forget anything this time. If you have any other questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you.